Experts in Omaha are once again treating and monitoring folks exposed to a potentially deadly disease. We start tonight with continuing coverage of the deadly hantavirus outbreak. Good evening. I'm Brian Mastery.
And I'm Erin Sullivan. Right now, 16 passengers exposed to the virus on a cruise ship are under quarantine and observation at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. Now, the Med Center is no stranger to treating diseases with the potential to start serious epidemics. Staff at this same unit treated patients for Ebola in 2014 and cruise passengers exposed to COVID-19 in the early days of the pandemic.
Now, the passengers landed at Eppley Airfield while most of us were still asleep just before 2:30 this morning. Medical crews were on the tarmac before the plane even landed. It was about 2 hours after touchdown before the passengers filed onto Nebraska Medicine shuttles.
And First Alert 6 was there when the motorcade arrived at the Med Center campus in Midtown Omaha. That was around 5:15. Officials said it was all part of the plan.
This is what strong public health system looks like. Experienced professionals, seamless coordination, and a shared commitment to protecting the American people.
Our Sydney Babb spent her day at UNMC's Davis Global Center, where state and federal officials reassured the public today.
She has more on those 16 people and how they're holding up as their nightmare vacation continues here in Omaha.
Right, and of those 16, only one tested positive. That person is being treated in their biocontainment unit here at UNMC. The other 15 are in their quarantine unit. Now, 2 more people traveled with them from Canary Island to Omaha, but then they made their way to Atlanta, where they're being treated at Emory Hospital after showing symptoms. We're told all 16 who are in Omaha were immediately evaluated after they arrived at Eppley Airfield overnight. They're described as being in good spirits and feeling well aside from tiredness from traveling. Depending on which unit they're in, things might look a bit different, with University of Nebraska's president giving a simple explanation.
Quarantine is sort of like a very well-managed, air-handled hotel room, and the biocontainment unit is like a very well-managed, air-handled intensive care unit.
Now, again, we're being told that when it comes to public risk, that risk is very, very low. The rooms that those passengers are staying in have low pressure and specialized air filtration systems that would prevent, if the virus were in that room, that would prevent that virus from escaping. Those patients and passengers also have no contact with anyone who is not a physician. There's no intermingling. They also are not getting any visitors, so they're only seeing their physicians a few times a day and will continue to do so until they are out of that 42-day quarantine period. In Omaha, I'm Sydney Babb, First Alert 6.
So in total, 18 cruise ship passengers landed in Omaha, but again, only 16 of them are here at the Med Center. As Sydney mentioned, 2 others took off again from Eppley bound for Atlanta. Health officials say one of those 2 was showing symptoms of hantavirus. Experts say transferring the pair to a hospital in Atlanta was to make sure the Med Center's biocontainment unit here had enough room to treat everyone in case more passengers started showing symptoms. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp says he is confident that his state can handle the situation.
We're as prepared as any state in the country to do this, and it's just the right thing to do. I mean, you think if you were one of those passengers that was stranded, especially if you were from Georgia, you would want your state to come to your aid, and that's exactly what we're going to do.
It's been more than 1 month since this outbreak centered around a Dutch cruise ship began. 3 infected passengers have died.
We've streamed hours of live coverage of the passengers' arrival in Omaha starting around 2 this morning. For the latest live breaking news updates, you always download our streaming app on Roku, Fire TV, and Apple TV. You can also stream us from your phone on our news app and at firstalert6.com. Well, we're on